We are talking about the curious case of Revenge of the CIS, or, as they're more widely known, ROTC.
ROTC. Okay.
Yeah.
So for those of us who might not be familiar, who are they?
So ROTC, just picture this. Royce Lopez and Mike Mersh, they've basically built their whole thing on being the online version of that friend who just loves to poke the bear.
Oh, yeah. We all know that guy.
They call themselves like a multimedia news insurgency.
Oh, wow.
But their weapon of choice, right, is this right-wing comedy.
And they've had a surprisingly big impact, I think, on this whole online world. Like, they really kind of came out of nowhere back in 2017.
Yeah, right as all this alternative media was finding its footing, and they really seemed to tap into a particular audience, shall we say.
And it felt very calculated, right? Like, they knew exactly how to get attention, how to make a splash, and especially how to kind of, like, ride the wave of an already dramatic story and make it even bigger.
Oh, absolutely. It was all about sensationalism, right? Picking fights, being loud, stirring the pot, whatever it took to get those clicks.
And it worked. I mean, that's the thing. Remember that whole Dan Schneider thing? The stuff with Nickelodeon?
Oh, how could I forget?
Like, that blew up online and they were right in the middle of it.
Right.
Did he have, like, insider information or something? What was the deal there?
It's really hard to say for sure, but they were definitely in the right place at the right time, and they knew how to make the most of it, fan the flames and all that.
And that's where things start to get really, I don't know, interesting, I guess.
Interesting is one word for it.
You're talking about that whole, like, cow possessiveness thing I saw in the thread. What is that about?
Okay, so cow possessiveness, right? You gotta love internet slang.
Yeah.
Basically, as ROTC got bigger, they got this reputation for treating the people they covered, especially these more obscure internet personalities, like they owned them.
Oh, really?
Like, they discovered them so nobody else was allowed to talk about them.
It's like they wanted to be the kings of internet trauma. Which I guess, in a way, they were for a while there.
They were playing the game, and they were winning.
But this is where it gets kind of messy, right? Because it wasn't just about, like, being the first one to tell the story. This possessiveness, combined with, like, the kind of stuff they were saying, it created this situation where some of their fans took it way too far.
It got dark, We're talking about straight up online harassment, pile-ons, the whole 9 yards, like a digital mob mentality. And that's when things get really complicated, right?
Yeah, because how much of that is on them?
Yeah.
They never said, go harass these people, but...
Exactly. It's that gray area, right? Where does responsibility lie? The thread goes back and forth on this. Some people say, look, they created this environment, they got to own it. Others say, you can't control what people do online. What do you think?
I mean, it's a question that's been around since, like, dawn of media, right?
Right.
Are you responsible for how people interpret or misinterpret what you put out there? It's a tough one. But what I find really fascinating is, for all their bluster, all their talk about being this unstoppable force, they really didn't like it when the tables were turned.
Oh, no. They could dish it out, but they could not take it.
Like, at all. And the thread is full of examples. That whole thing with porcelain pot awful, that disaster on Beauty in the beta.
Oh, yeah. And don't even get me started on Owen Benjamin.
Oh, we're going there. Okay, good. Tell me more.
Oh, we're going down that rabbit hole, my friend. But before we do, we need to talk about something called the horseshoe theory.
The what now?
The horseshoe theory. It's a way of looking at political extremes, and trust me, it's relevant here.
Okay, you've piqued my interest.
Oh.
Lay it on me.
Yeah.
What is this horseshoe theory all about?
Okay, so imagine a horseshoe, right?
Okay, got it.
The far left is on one end, the far right is on the other end. But here's the thing. The theory says those extremes, they actually have more in common with each other than they do with the folks in the middle.
Oh, interesting. So they're closer than they appear.
Exactly. And ROTC, prime example.
Okay, I'm listening.
They built their whole brand on calling out hypocrisy, right? Especially what they saw as like this SJW stuff.
Right.
But then they turn around and do the exact same things.
Oh, the irony. So where do we go from here?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Let's dive into the Owen Benjamin saga, and maybe, just maybe, we can start to unpack this whole mess. So Owen Benjamin, right, he's like this cautionary tale, former comedian, had his thing going on, and then boom, goes down this rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and all this online extremism. It's like the internet giveth and the internet taketh away.
And ROTC, being ROTC, they were all over that train wreck. like moths to a flame.
It was like they saw this opportunity, right, to be the ones chronicling his downfall, this whole we were right all along kind of thing. And remember, this is all happening while they're trying to build their own brand, right?
And didn't they try to, like, get in on the action themselves? I vaguely remember something about them selling prank mail or something.
Oh, yeah, you're not imagining things. They had this whole thing where they were selling prank mail through an account called, and I still can't believe this is a real name, Guns for Tards.
Oh, my God. Okay, on the one hand, that's just, I don't even have words.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like so perfectly on brand for them.
Right. Like it's provocative, it's meant to get a reaction, and it's really hard to tell if they're being serious or not.
Which, let's be honest, is a pretty smart way to build a following online. Even if people hate you, they're still talking about you.
Exactly. And as they got more attention, they obviously attracted more scrutiny. And that's where Kiwi Farms comes in.
Right, because you can't really talk about ROTC without talking about Kiwi Farms. Like, they're obsessed with these guys.
It's this weird symbiotic relationship, you know? Like, ROTC needs an audience, and Kiwi Farms gives them this platform, this whole community that's dedicated to documenting their every move.
I mean, the thread we're looking at is a perfect example. It's like the greatest hits collection of all their most controversial moments, all the feuds, the cringeworthy stuff. It's all there.
Yeah, and you gotta admit, there's a certain voyeuristic thrill to it, right? But it also makes you wonder about the ethics of it all. Like, how much is too much?
Oh, for sure. There were times reading through this thread where I was like, am I enjoying this too much? This is kind of messed up. But I just couldn't look away.
Right, it's that car crash effect. But it brings us back to that line we talked about earlier, you know, between entertainment and exploitation, documentation and harassment. It's a blurry line for sure. And speaking of blurry lines, we got to talk about the whole Pod Awful saga. Remember him?
Oh, yeah. He was like on their side, and then he wasn't. Things went south real fast, if I'm remembering right.
Oh, yeah. Total falling out. So Pod Awful, he starts out kind of aligned with ROTC, at least ideologically, but then I don't know what happened, but he basically does a 180, starts calling them out for being hypocrites, accusing them of being in it for the money, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, that's got to hurt. So how do they react?
Not well as you might imagine.
Let me guess. More outrage, more accusations.
Bingo. They accused him of orchestrating harassment campaigns. It was a mess. But here's the thing, and this is what I find so fascinating about ROTC. They built their whole persona on being the ones who could say whatever they wanted, consequences be damned, right?
Right.
But when the tables were turned, they couldn't handle it.
So it's a case of can dish it out but can't take it, which ironically just made things worse for them.
Exactly. The more they lashed out, the more they became the target. It was like this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder, were they ever really in control of the narrative, or were they just along for the ride?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? Like, are they pulling the strings or are they the puppets? And going back to that horseshoe theory.
Oh, it's all connected, my friend.
It's amazing how both ROTC and their biggest critics, even though they claim to be on opposite sides of everything, they use all the same tactics.
Yeah.
The outrage, the personal attacks, trying to control the narrative, and even like the humor. Even though it's pretty dark humor, I'll admit, it's like they're reading from the same playbook.
It really makes you think, right? Like maybe the internet itself, with all its echo chambers and algorithms, maybe that's the real puppet master here. But that's a whole other conversation.
Definitely a deep dive for another day. So where does ROTC go from here? Do they survive all of this? Do they fade into obscurity? What's the deal? So are they still around? Did they make it?
Well, from what I can gather, you know, based on the latest rumblings in the digital sphere, it seems like ROTC is still a thing.
Really?
Yeah, they're still out there. Their audience, it might have, you know, ebbed and flowed a bit, but there's still an appetite for what they do.
I guess there's a certain, I don't know what to even call it, like a resilience there.
Right.
They've had so much thrown at them. Stuff that would have taken down other people. And they're still going.
Oh, absolutely. They've weathered some serious storms.
It was kind of wild.
Yeah.
Like they've tapped into this specific frequency or something, this need for content that exists completely outside of what we normally think of as acceptable, you know?
I know exactly what you mean.
Like love them or hate them, they found their niche and they're sticking to it.
And it brings us back to Kiwi Farms, right?
Always.
Because as much as they're, you know, documenting every little thing ROTC does, they're also giving them this platform.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like without Kiwi farms, would ROTC even be a blip on the radar?
It's just a weird kind of codependent thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's this strange back and forth. They need each other, even though they're constantly at each other's throats.
It makes you think about these online communities, right? They can be good, I guess.
Right.
A place for people to connect over shared interests, even if those interests are, a little out
Oh,
there.
totally. Like finding your tribe, right.
But then there's the other side of it, the echo chamber thing.
Yeah, where those ideas, those voices, they just get amplified. No balance, no counterpoint.
And suddenly something that seems small, like insignificant in the grand scheme of things, it takes on this whole other life of its own. Like, remember that whole Teddy Spitty thing from the thread?
Oh, yeah, I do.
I have no idea what that even means, but it seems important to someone.
Right, Teddy Spaghetti. It's like, in the context of Kiwi farms, it's this whole thing,
Right.
like an inside joke, Only the people in the know get it.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How these online spaces, they create their own languages, their own little world.
Absolutely. It's like they're speaking in code sometimes.
And it's a reminder that the internet, it's not just about information, it's about power too. Who has it, who gets to decide what matters, and how those dynamics are constantly shifting. Which is kind of the story of ROTC when you think about it.
Right, that they went from being these fringe commentators to becoming the targets themselves. The internet is a fickle beast, my friend.
That it is. Well, here we are at the end of another deep dive. What have we learned? What wisdom can we impart to our listeners today?
I think the big takeaway here is that the line between what's real and what's performance, between comedy and actual beliefs, it's blurrier than ever.
That's a really good point.
Especially online, right? People can hide behind these personas, these carefully crafted images. It's hard to tell what's genuine anymore.
And as viewers, as consumers of all this content, I think it's more important than ever to be aware of that, to be critical, to not just take everything at face value, and to remember that even the most outrageous online personality is still a real person with real feelings and a real life offline.
100%.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the drama, the laughs, the outrage, but we got to remember there are real consequences to all of this,
Yeah. The internet might seem like a game sometimes, but it's not. It's real life with real stakes.
Well said.
So, to our listeners, as we leave you to ponder the curious case of ROTC, remember, the internet is a hall of mirrors. Be careful out there. Think before you click. And never underestimate the power of a good story.
And never, ever underestimate the power of a good meme.
Until next time.